Welcome to the Rational Egoist. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz. A topic that's always interested me, I don't know about always, but at least for the last 23 years, has been the hierarchy of needs theory of Abraham Maslow. Specifically, what interested me was his idea of self-actualization. So I was looking to find somebody to interview on the subject who would know more about it than I do, and I came across today's guest, who is a cognitive scientist and humanistic psychologist who explores intelligence, creativity, and the depths of human potential. He was also recently made the list of the top 2% of scientists in all fields. And I could probably spend the entire podcast just talking about his accolades and accomplishments. So without further ado, here is Scott Barry Kaufman. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Michael. Really glad to be on it.
I'm really glad to have you here. Well, for starters, who was Abraham Maslow?
He was a humanistic psychologist. He actually created the field of humanistic psychology in the 50s and 60s, and he died in 1970 at a young age of 62. And the field of humanistic psychology is about what does it mean to live a vital life, to feel like your whole self is being expressed, and that your highest potentials are being expressed. Creativity is a big part of it, as well as transcendence and looking outward and contributing to society. And yeah, he had a very short career, but he made quite an impact on the field and on society, and for me personally.
Okay, anybody that's ever taken an intro to psychology course or even a business management class has come across the hierarchy of needs pyramid. What is the hierarchy of needs?
Maslow proposed a theory of motivation, whereas we have various what he called prepotent needs. We have certain needs that when they are predominant in our consciousness, usually when they're deprived, we really have trouble focusing on anything else. So if we're chronically hungry, that's probably our most prepotent need, or we don't feel physiologically safe. We focus all of our attention on that. When we feel deprived of security, we tend to focus all our attention on that. We feel deprived of connection, self-esteem. He argued that if we could reach a certain I don't want to use the word level, but if we could reach a certain satisfaction in those needs, it really frees us up to focus on self-actualization and helping people become all they're capable of becoming.
I'm glad you didn't want to use the word level, because
Right.
up until I just read an interview that you did, I always thought of the hierarchy of needs in a similar vein as Freud's psychosexual stages or Erickson's psychosocial stages, where you just go from one to the other. And so I thought, okay, you meet these needs, now you can go to the next level and so on and so forth. But you say that's actually not how it was meant to be, and that he never
Now,
actually created that pyramid. So what is a better way to think about it?
Maslow, that's right. Maslow never thought of it as a pyramid, as a series of levels that you never have to worry about another one level as you get to the next level. I think that really what he emphasized was the journey, and the developmental journey involves being itself. It also involves security. So security and growth are the two major motivations that we tend to constantly oscillate between. And he argued that we have to continually choose the growth option and overcome the fear option again and again and again. And it's just a continual process, not something that you ever completely lick.
Is it similar? It sounds like I used to think about, for instance, self-esteem as being you have high or low self-esteem. But then I read, and it made sense to me, that it's actually better to conceptualize self-esteem as being fluctuating. And you don't want to have a rapidly fluctuating self-esteem where you're hitting highs and lows. It's better to sort of be more steady. And it sounds like that's kind of like what you're talking about, that you might reach a certain level or certain, I don't know a better word than level or stage, but you might meet certain needs and progress, but constantly have to continue to do that. Maybe even go back and then go forward again. Thought that was a very interesting way to look at it, and I've never looked at it like that before.
Self-esteem?
No. I'm talking about in the hierarchy of needs. So, like, I always thought, like I said, like you just go from one stage to the next. I
Uh-huh.
never looked at it as you kind of go backwards, then you might go forwards a little bit, and you have to keep working on it. I just used self-esteem as an analogy, that it's more of a fluctuating kind of thing rather than just a constant stage to stage thing. Like, you don't just achieve safety needs and now you're good with that for forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty much what I was saying in my description of about the human development process. It is, you're right, it constantly two-step forward, one-step back dynamic. We have to keep choosing growth and overcome the fear response. I mean, I think the fear response is predominant so often, or at least not just fear, but the avoidance response is often feels the safest for most of us, is choosing the avoidance.
That the idea of sort of two steps forward, one steps back resonates with me, uh, because I know I was a really bad human being. I don't know how to else to put it. I mean, I was a hardened criminal, and I made the choice to change. But just
Wow.
making that initial choice to change doesn't then make smooth sailing the rest, the rest of the way. I still have to work on it. So I know it's a lifelong process, and there's setbacks are guaranteed. And it's, you have to just continually make the decision. No, I'm not going to keep going backwards. I'm going to put forth the effort to go forward, to become better. And I come to view life like that. Like, it's a constant process. You never arrive. You're always in the process of going. And that for me,
Yeah.
it resonates and it works very well.
Wow. What did you do you feel comfortable talking about what you did as a criminal?
Oh, I mean, sure. I ultimately ended up I don't want to say my most serious crime, but the crime for which I got the most time. I broke up with a girl and she had a new boyfriend, and I was jealous, and I arranged for my friends to break in the house and beat him up and stab him. And I got 27 years for that. But I also had drug charges, other assault cases, and a whole host of things that I was never caught for. I mean, that was my lifestyle. And fortunately, I got put away at a young age before I ended up getting, into far worse trouble or killed, or who knows what would have happened to me.
Yeah. Did the guy die that was stabbed?
No, he did not die.
Yeah.
Thankfully,
Yeah.
thankfully, I'm very fortunate in that regard.
Do you feel like you're kind of like a different person today?
Oh, sure. I mean, the way that I think, the way that I view the world is entirely different. And I actually read Maslow years ago. I had somebody send me, I think it was 2005. I was in prison, and I had somebody send me Carl Rogers' book on becoming a person, and Maslow's book, The Further Reaches of Human Nature. And there's a lot in there that I would disagree with, but there was a lot that I was able to take and apply to my own life and just try to continually grow. I mean, Maslow, he it made me realize that no matter how satiated we get in life, you're still, human beings constantly want more. There's constantly more growing to do. So just
Sure.
because you reach a certain point in your life where you've met needs, you're going to want more. And it helped me understand why somebody that's a billionaire, for instance, would want to keep working or keep inventing, whatever, because we never run out of needs to be to be met.
We never run out of
You
needs.
know what I mean? And that's, I guess we can call them values maybe, or wants, but they're still, I think, felt as if they're needs, as if I've got to keep going. I've got to keep doing things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that even contentment for too long becomes boring.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. If you're on vacation, sometimes you can get to a point where you feel like you've overstayed your vacation.
Yeah, I find it hard to relax sometimes because I'm like, there's stuff I need to be doing, especially because I'm so far behind after spending
Mm.
so much time in prison that I feel like I need to work extra hard to just to try to sort of catch up with where I should be.
How did you mentally make it through so many years in prison? Routine, was that key?
No, reading and friendship. I was lucky enough to develop a friendship with somebody, and we were in the same housing unit for 16 years, and we were cellmates for 11. And
Wow.
he and I at the same point decided that we were going to change our lives. So to have a sort of a partner to go forward that would call me out on my nonsense and I could call him out on his, and constantly getting feedback from each other. We were reading a lot of books. That just helped immensely.
I
And
love
just a
that.
determination to just keep going forward. I always think of an analogy, that if if you're on the edge of a building and you want to get off that edge and there's fire, you can either
Yeah.
go through that fire or you can die. And the fire might suck and it might be painful, but jumping off that building is going to be worse. So I'd rather just go through the flame, deal with the difficulties, deal with the problem, and then be stronger and better off for it afterwards. And that's
Yeah.
been my experience, that when I deal with the problems and face things about myself I don't want to face, I always feel better about it afterwards.
That's wonderful. What
I
need
think
was
so.
served in your childhood that led to your life of criminality that does you no longer feel that uh you no longer feel that you need that
Well,
need
well, there's
fulfilled
such
anymore?
it's so over determined. You know what I mean? It's not like one thing. I mean, I had severe attachment issues and abandonment issues, but that doesn't have to manifest itself in violence. You know what I mean? I was also taught to be violent at a young age. Plus, my natural disposition, I had a temper even as a baby. A young kid, I always had a temper.
Gotcha.
And you combine all these things together and you kind of create the perfect storm for a criminal. But you also, I don't even like to talk about it in those ways because it almost sounds as if I'm speaking in a deterministic fashion, but I made choices all along the way. There were people that tried to help me that I avoided or I ignored. There came a time when I knew what I was doing was wrong. I didn't care and I could have chose otherwise.
Mm,
So ultimately the responsibility has to lie with me. And the relevance for the discussion that we're having here is that it's empowering, because
mm.
once I know that I'm responsible for my choices, then I can make better ones and I can just, choose to grow and
Yeah.
thrive in this world rather than just be a parasite and a thug.
Yeah. You got it. You got the right idea. You should get a copy of the book Choose Growth.
I was seeing the stuff that you wrote, and I'm definitely going to look into it.
Cool.
You mentioned something that I found interesting is you talked about how people need to be integrated, and you used a metaphor of a sailboat. Can you explain what it means for a human being to be an integrated human being or a whole person?
It just means that like the different parts of you are working together and not at odds with each other. You're not fighting each other. You're not fighting in a civil war within yourself. Um, it's all kind of contributing to a higher piece of yourself that the parts of you that wants love is not at odds with the part of you that has fear, is not at odds with the part of you that feels um, that you want success in life, is not at odds with your low self-esteem. That all the parts of you are kind of like rooting for you.
I like it. And the goal, or I guess the goal, the end goal is this self-actualization. What is self-actualization?
Self-actualization is, I mean, at one level, it's just becoming all that you're capable of becoming. It's um, realizing your full potential. I mean, I really think of it as creativity. You know, you're actualizing what is unique within you.
Is it related to the concept of flow?
I think flow is a really important contributor to self-actualization. It's hard to be all you're capable of when you're really having trouble concentrating or putting your full energy into a task. So I do think that it's related for sure. Yeah, I mean flow is great when you can get when you can get into it, but it's not always easy to get into.
No, I think I've experienced it when writing,
Mm.
and but it's not an easy achievement, and I don't think it could be something that could be there all the time. I think it would just completely exhaust a person to be in that sort of hyper focused flow state, you know. So with the self actualization, what what relevance does free will, because there's a debate in philosophy, in psychology, about free will versus determinism. What role does that play when it comes to self-actualization?
Well, some people view free will as only defined as could you have made a different choice, and to what extent are you caused by prior causes that are, that you're not even aware of. There's a long chain of things that has led up to your decisions. When you made that decision to get that guy stabbed, I mean, um in so many ways you really didn't have a choice in that moment. If you fully understood all of the factors that came together to cause that choice, including your genes, including your upbringing, including what you had for breakfast that morning. Maybe you had too much coffee. I don't know. But there's maybe just a whole combination of things that really has, we think we're in a lot more control than we really are. And I think that is true. But I also do think that we have some free will worth wanting. We have the power capacity to have self-control, to a certain extent, to learn from our mistakes, as you're a great example of, to set new goals for the future, and constantly make efforts to strive to be a better person. To me, those are free will. That's a free will worth wanting that humans do have, and tends to get downplayed by philosophers and psychologists who argue we have no free will.
The novelist philosopher Ayn Rand, who has had an immense influence on my life. I mean, it's the name of the show, The Rational Egoist. She describes free will as the ability the primary choice is to focus or not to focus. So basically, that we have the ability. Oh, Nathaniel Brandon. I actually just did an interview with a guy, probably the biggest critic of Nathaniel Brandon that there is out there. Just not of his psychology. I'm actually Nathaniel Brandon's psychology has influenced me quite a bit. But it's the choice to think or not to think, to actually focus the mind and put forth the effort to engage in a cognitive process or not to. And I think of it in terms of almost effort. Like I can either just flow and allow life to throw me whichever, direction it wants to based on my genes and environmental happenstance, or I can choose to focus my mind, learn from my environment, learn how to live properly, learn what's best for me. Does that make sense to you? That kind of free will where it's a matter of focusing one's mind on just to be aware and to think?
Yeah, living a conscious life is very important. Now, I mean, I think that we get too hung up on definitions of free will. Someone could argue that's not real free will, but who cares? It's I mean, it's like doesn't matter. It's a way, it's a good way to live one's life. It's a good way to make decisions, to to live a life well lived, living it consciously and intentionally. I really am a big believer in living mindfully and intentionally. And to me, the more that you create that space between immediate reaction and the decision that you want to make and how you want to react to it, the more you can create that space, the more you are effectively having free will, even if you're not in actuality having any free will.
Well, see, to me, it's impossible for me to function as if I don't have free will. I mean, ultimately I have to decide things. I have to make choices. That's one thing I don't have any control over. And if I'm focused, I'm making better decisions. And it's also, like I said earlier, it's very empowering. The idea that I have choices, the idea that I'm in control to a certain extent of my life. Now, that doesn't mean I'm, omnipotent or omniscient. I could do everything right and walk out and get hit by a bus. That can happen. But my life trajectory is far better or far more promising, and I have a far more probability of achieving self-actualization if I'm making good choices, if I'm putting forth the effort to think logically and not just go by emotional whims. So I think that not only is free will, in my view, it's validated, it exists, but not only that, but it's also beneficial. I mean, I don't want to be a robot, some sort of automaton that's just driven by the winds of happenstance, by what genes I happen to have in my cells and what environment I happen to be placed in. I mean, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think that's the problem with people who become too environmentally determined about our outcomes in life. We ignore the role of genes, and therefore we ignore the role of individual disposition, personality, and choice. So yes, that does make sense to me.
Great. So I'm in agreement with one of the top 2% of scientists that there is.
Technically, my specific ranking puts me at the 0.05% actually, but
Oh,
um,
wow. It's even
but
better than I
who's
thought.
counting? Who's counting?
Me. Me. So when I
I
brag
I
to
am within
people,
I am within the 2%, but I'm actually my specific ranking puts me at the 0.05%. But
okay, so now when I brag about who I'm interviewing, I could say that he's in the top 0.5% of scientists in the world. Now,
yeah.
so this topic of self-actualization, this is self-actualization something that's achievable by your average person, or only
Um,
by people who are born with high IQs or high levels of creativity, or any other genetic talents?
hmm. Um, it's tricky because um I would never I would never try to put any limits on anyone prematurely. I'm a big fan of letting people realize their potential and kind of see where the cards lie, and see what happens when they put their biggest effort into it. I think there are many different paths to self-actualization. That's the whole point of self-actualization is, find the thing that's most unique within yourself, and really try to hone that, not try to don't compare yourself to others. See, to me, that's just a really key part of the self-actualization journey. So some people, they might not be particularly think of themselves as particularly creative, but if they're really being authentic, in a lot of ways they are in essence being creative, you know.
So would you say that authenticity is an important component of self-actualization?
Yes, I mean, for sure. um uh I like to call it healthy authenticity. So with healthy authenticity can exist to not really help with to not really give us much uh growth, right? So if you just say everything that's on your mind at all times, that might not lead to the highest levels of growth.
You just be a
But
dick, right?
correct. Correct. That's right. But if you really can uh really have healthy authenticity where you have radical self-honesty, you have radical awareness, you have authentic relationships with others where you really say what you feel is in your heart, not worried so much about what they'll think of you. Um, and if you have integrity, those are the four aspects of healthy authenticity that I include in my scientific model, my top 0.05% scientific model. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Are there any other characteristics or ways of thinking and behaving that would help somebody move toward self-actualization?
I have a test that people can take for free at selfactualizationtest.com.
Really? Okay.
Yep, and it'll tell them what their top three sources of self-actualization are, out of 10 characteristics of self-actualization. So I've studied 10. They include authenticity, it includes purpose, includes humanitarian concern, creative spirit, includes a whole bunch of things.
So self-actualization, I liked this. I don't know if I can't remember now if it was Maslow that you were quoting or if you said it, but basically it was that we want lilies to be great lilies. We don't want lilies to turn into rocks. So basically, self-actualization means
That was a good that was funny.
something like that. I don't remember. I probably butchered it, but I got the essence of it
We want to
right.
make a rose into a good rose, not make roses into lilies.
Okay, that's it. Yeah. Okay.
That was cool.
Yeah, well, I remembered the principle and I had to improvise. So, but what that says to me is that I got to be the best me that I can be. I don't have to be the best Scott Barry Kaufman or the best anybody else. I have to live up to my highest potential, right? So, does that make sense to you? Is that how you would interpret that metaphor, I guess? Oh, I think you froze on me. Top 0.5% of scientists, but the Wi-Fi is no good. Oh no. Well, let me freestyle for a minute. So I think that being the best me that I can be means exactly what Scott talked about, and that's being authentic, not trying to pretend to be something I'm not, not trying to live up to the expectations of other people, not trying to get people to like me. It's about liking myself for being the best that I can be, the best podcaster, the best friend, the best ethically, just being the absolute best person that I can be. That to me is self-actualization. It's constantly working on myself on a lifelong journey of growth. And that's what I want to do. And that's what I would hope for the audience. And that's why I had Scott Barry Kaufman on the show. And I thought it was interesting that he came and he showed the Nathaniel Branden book. Now, while that is a biography that I've never read and I really don't care to read it, if you watch the episode with James Valiant, you heard us talking about Nathaniel Branden's The Psychology and his theory of self-esteem. And to me, that comports very well with the idea of self-actualization, the being confident in my ability to achieve things and feeling worthy of achieving those things. That is almost the essence of self-actualization. It's a complete love of myself and positive evaluation of myself that's based in reality, not based on my imagination or my wishes or my wants, but actually is grounded firmly in the here and the now, and I guess in the future as well, because that's what we're going to do. We have to live into the future unless we're going to die. And I don't think anybody, well, most people don't want to do that. I suppose some people do. Well, I guess we've lost Scott, and that's unfortunate because I thought he was great. I know that he can be reached at scottbarrykaufman.com is his website, and I hope you'll look for it, and I hope you'll look him up. I think he's been a great guest, and hopefully I'll be able to have him on in the future. For now, try to self-actualize, people. Do your best, be the best you can be. For now, this is the Rational Egoist signing out. This is Michael Liebowitz. Till next time.